My sister expected me to foot the bill for her engagement party, and then she and my parents acted as if I didn't exist, disinviting me from the celebration. So I pulled the plug on everything and watched their plans fall apart. My name is Lauren, and if I had to describe my role in my family, I'd say I was the background noise, the blurred figure in the back of every photo, always serving snacks or cleaning up after the real event. It's been that way for as long as I can remember, and honestly, it all shifted the moment my little sister, Amber, arrived. I was 5 when Amber was born, and up until then, my life felt relatively normal. I was just a kid, busy drawing dinosaurs on the walls, glued to Saturday morning cartoons, and getting all the hugs and bedtime stories a little girl could want. But the instant Amber made her grand entrance, it was like someone flipped a switch and dimmed my light. Suddenly, everything revolved around her. At first, I told myself it was normal, okay, babies are cute and require constant attention, right? But this went far beyond typical baby-centric behavior. My parents didn't just love Amber, they practically worshipped the ground she walked on. I remember Mom holding her up like a prize and saying, "Look at our little star." Dad would beam at her as if she had just single-handedly solved world hunger. Meanwhile, I was standing there, feeling completely invisible, like, hello, I'm still here. I drew this amazing picture of a dinosaur that took me hours, and Mom would barely glance at it, offering a distracted, "That's nice, honey," before returning to cooing over Amber's uncanny ability to burp on command. By the time Amber was 3, she had become the undisputed star of every family gathering. When she started ballet, Mom made sure to invite every relative within a 100-mile radius to watch her spin around in her tutu. I swear, every single one of my relatives has a video on their phones of Amber doing some mediocre twirl in our living room while I'm relegated to the corner, setting out juice cups. "Lauren, help me with this," Mom would say, not even bothering to look up as I passed out napkins and plates. The infuriating thing was Amber was genuinely talented. She always got picked first for talent shows and school plays. It was as if she possessed this magnetic charisma that effortlessly drew everyone in. And me? I was just there. It wasn't that I hated her, I simply felt like I ceased to exist in their eyes. It wasn't just during family events, this dynamic played out in our everyday lives as well. I'd come home from school, eager to share the fact that I got an A on my science project, but before I could even open my mouth, Mom would interrupt with, "Lauren, take Amber outside to practice her cartwheels." Never a "Hi, honey, how was your day?" Or, "Wow, great job on your project." Just a casual dismissal. And then there were the chores. Oh my God, the never-ending chores. I don't even think Amber knew where we kept the broom. If there were dishes in the sink, they were automatically my responsibility. Laundry piling up? You guessed it, that was my job. I started learning how to cook when I was only 8 because Mom was always too busy driving Amber to and from dance class. "You're the big sister," she'd say with a sigh. "You need to set a good example." It wasn't like I expected a ticker tape parade for folding socks, but it would have been nice to at least feel acknowledged, maybe even appreciated, just once. The only time anyone seemed to notice me was when something went wrong. If Amber spilled juice on the carpet, it was obviously because I wasn't watching her closely enough. If she scraped her knee, it was because I hadn't been careful enough. I don't even know how I managed to get blamed for things that happened when I wasn't even in the room. One day, my teacher called home to tell my parents that I'd been helping other kids with their math homework. I guess she thought they would be proud or something. Instead, when I got home, my mom just said, "That's nice. Did you remember to clean the bathroom today?" Are you kidding me? The bathroom? That was the only acknowledgement of my good deed. The only real escape I had was school. I threw myself into my classes and signed up for as many clubs as I could manage, anything to stay out of the house as long as possible. I even started going to the library after school just to avoid the constant barrage of, "Lauren, can you do this for Amber?" Amber, meanwhile, was accumulating awards and accolades like it was her job. She had this dedicated shelf in the living room just for her trophies and medals, dance competitions, talent shows, even some random art contests she entered on a whim. If she so much as sneezed, Mom and Dad were practically giving her a standing ovation, and if I dared to say anything about it, I was labeled as being negative or, God forbid, unsupportive. One Christmas, I distinctly remember asking for a set of colored pencils because I love to draw. When I finally unwrapped my gift, it was a sad little pack of basic pencils, the kind you'd find in any classroom supply box. It was just another reminder of where I stood in the family hierarchy. Amber received a brand new ballet bar and a custom leotard, her name stitched right onto the fabric. I don't even recall her acknowledging the gifts with a thank you. What stung the most was her obliviousness to the disparity. She wasn't cruel or malicious, she simply existed, and that seemed to be enough to warrant everyone else's adoration and support. She didn't strive, didn't exert herself, advantages materialized effortlessly for her simply because she was Amber. I remember, around the age of 12, questioning my mom about Amber's exemption from chores. Mom's response was a dismissive shrug. She's overwhelmed with her activities. You're naturally good at organizing, Lauren. That was the extent of the discussion. No consideration for my own fatigue, my own needs. By 13, I had resigned myself to the role of the family's quiet, supportive presence. I wasn't the star, not even in the periphery. Amber was the sun, and I was a distant planet, perpetually orbiting her brilliance. The injustice of it all was glaring, but what power did I possess to alter the celestial alignment? Then, a flicker of hope emerged at school. Our history teacher announced a weekend excursion to the state capitol. A prestigious opportunity. It involved visits to significant historical sites, including museums, the old courthouse, and even meetings with local government officials. Only a select few students were chosen, and, to my astonishment, I was among them. Excitement bubbled within me, threatening to overflow. Returning home, I eagerly presented the permission slip to Mom, rambling about the extraordinary experiences that awaited me. Her attention remained fixed on her tablet. "That's nice," she offered blandly. "Nice?" I echoed, practically vibrating with enthusiasm. "Mom, this is a significant event. We'll be staying overnight in a hotel, and we're scheduled to tour the governor's mansion. They even mentioned a visit to the archives." She finally lifted her gaze, a frown creasing her brow as she examined the form. "Lauren, this is next weekend." "Yes, I'm aware." She shook her head, placing the paper on the counter. "You can't attend." My elation vanished instantly, replaced by a hollow ache. "What? Why?" "Amber's gymnastics meet is next weekend," she stated, as if uttering an undeniable truth. "We'll require your assistance with her costumes and snacks." I stared, searching for any hint of jest, but her expression remained serious. "Mom, this is a school trip. It's educational. Can't you manage Amber's meet without my involvement just this once?" She sighed as if I were making an unreasonable demand. "Lauren, don't be selfish. Amber needs your support." Dad's voice drifted from the living room, his eyes glued to the television screen. "Your sister has a promising future, Lauren. You should feel pride in supporting her aspirations." Pride? Was I supposed to derive satisfaction from assembling snack bags and attaching sequins to leotards? "But this event is important to me," I pleaded, my voice trembling. Mom dismissed my concerns with a wave of her hand. "You can participate next time." But I knew there would be no next time. The trip was a rare occurrence, and by the time it was offered again, I would have moved on to high school. They remained indifferent to my disappointment. They always had been. That weekend, while my classmates explored historic landmarks and captured memories, I sat on a cold, metal bench in a noisy gymnasium watching Amber perform her routines as Mom and Dad cheered as if she was competing in the Olympics. An urge to scream built in my throat. Amber ultimately received a small medal for her age group. The photo Mom insisted on taking still stings. Her, beaming, holding Amber's trophy. "Isn't she amazing?" she prompted, nudging me. "Yeah," I mumbled, tasting the bitter tang of resentment. "Amazing." It wasn't long after that ridiculous photo shoot that Amber's world came crashing down. During gymnastics practice, she attempted some complicated dismount and plummeted off the beam. The sickening crack of her wrist as she landed echoes in my memory. Mom, predictably, whisked her off to the ER, and they returned with Amber sporting a bright white cast and a doctor's grim prognosis. The fracture was bad, but the real blow was the damage to her flexibility. Competitive gymnastics, according to the doctor, was essentially over. You'd think that would be enough for one family to deal with, but my parents, masters of the dramatic, managed to amplify the chaos. Mom dissolved into tears, pacing the living room like a caged animal. "What are we going to do now?" Gymnastics was everything to her. Dad sat slumped in his armchair, massaging his temples, muttering, "This is a disaster." I was in the kitchen, trying to focus on pre-calculus, when Mom burst in, her face contorted with anger. "Lauren, this is your fault." I stared at her, dumbfounded. "What are you talking about?" "You should have been supervising her warm-ups," she accused, her voice like shards of glass. My pencil clattered to the floor. "I wasn't even there." "Exactly," she snapped. "You should have been there to support her, but no, you're always so engrossed in your own little world. This family is falling apart and you're just sitting there doing homework like nothing happened." I was speechless, as always. Arguing was pointless, they were never really listening. Dad chimed in, his voice dripping with disappointment. "Maybe if you spent less time being withdrawn and more time being a supportive sibling, Amber wouldn't have gotten hurt." That was it. Grounded. A month of silence. No TV, no phone, no escape through my non-existent social life. My world shrank to school, endless chores, and the constant undercurrent of guilt my parents expertly manufactured. Amber, of course, played the victim card for all it was worth. She'd recline on the couch, her cast a gleaming symbol of her suffering, issuing commands. "Lauren, could you get me some water?" Or, "Mom, tell Lauren to help me with my homework, I can't write." I fought against the simmering resentment. It wasn't really her fault, I reasoned. She was simply doing what she'd always done, basking in the spotlight, letting everyone cater to her every whim. It wasn't her fault our parents treated her like royalty and me like the unpaid staff. But understanding didn't make it any easier to bear. My sanctuary was Mia's family's bakery, a small, cozy haven in our small town. Mia and I would spend hours there after school helping with simple tasks like folding pastry boxes or sweeping the floor. Her parents, Scott and Donna, were the kind of people who genuinely saw you. If I looked tired, Donna would gently ask if I'd had anything to eat. If I accomplished something, Scott would offer a quiet nod and "Good job, kid." Such small gestures, but they resonated deeply. They made me feel like I mattered, like I was more than just a shadow in someone else's life. My own parents could have been like that if they had only tried. But they were too consumed with elevating Amber, blind to me standing right in front of them, drowning in their impossible expectations. I stopped expecting things to change. If they hadn't noticed me by now, they probably never would. By the time I turned 18, I was simply going through the motions. I avoided conversations with my parents whenever possible, spending as much time as I could at school, the library, or the bakery. Home ceased to feel like a home. It became a place I was trapped in, waiting for an opportunity to escape. Then, senior year arrived, and for the first time in what felt like forever, a sliver of hope emerged. I'd been working relentlessly in school, and my efforts finally paid off when I received my acceptance letter to the state university. It wasn't an Ivy League school or anything glamorous, but it was solid, respected, and it felt like my personal escape route. And to top it off, I'd received a partial scholarship, not enough to cover everything, but a significant start. I decided to wait until dinner to share the news, figuring it was the best chance to garner their attention, however fleeting. Dad was meticulously carving the roast chicken, while Amber, as usual, was glued to her phone, oblivious. I pushed the acceptance letter across the kitchen table, the glossy paper sliding a little too easily on the worn surface. I got in, I managed, trying to keep my voice even, to not let the tremor of hope betray me. Mom barely glanced at it before returning her gaze to her dinner plate. "That's nice, Lauren," she said, her tone flat. "Nice?" Years of late nights, sacrificed weekends, striving for the single, monumental achievement, and all I warranted was nice? Despite the sting, I pressed on. "It's not as expensive as you think. I've already earned a scholarship that covers a portion of the tuition. I just need a little help to bridge the gap." Mom sighed, that familiar sound of exasperation that always seemed to surface whenever I asked for anything. "We're not taking out any loans, Lauren." "I'm not asking for loans," I corrected quickly, my voice rising slightly. "I just need some help initially. I promise I'll pay it all back. I'll even sign a contract, whatever you need." Dad finally looked up from his food, his expression unreadable. "College isn't for everyone, Lauren. Some people find more success going straight into the workforce." I could feel the heat rising in my cheeks. Amber, predictably, snickered, her eyes glued to her phone. "Yeah, maybe you should have thought about that before you wasted all your time on studying." My fists clenched tightly beneath the table, the pressure a futile attempt to contain the frustration boiling inside me. "It's not a waste of time. I've already planned everything out. I'll graduate, find a good job, and pay you back. I just need a little bit of help to get me started." Mom shook her head dismissively. "We simply don't have the money, Lauren. You need to be realistic. Maybe you could find a job at the mall or something. Plenty of people do just fine without a college degree." I stared at my untouched plate, the mashed potatoes suddenly resembling a tasteless, gray lump. I fought back the tears that threatened to spill over. I knew they had the money. Amber's expensive gymnastics lessons weren't exactly free, and neither were the endless art supplies and piano lessons they indulged her with after she abruptly lost interest in gymnastics. But when it came to my future, my ambitions, suddenly the coffers were empty. After dinner, I practically ran to the bakery hoping Mia would be there. I desperately needed to vent, to unload the weight of disappointment before it crushed me completely. She was wiping down the counter when I walked in, and the instant she saw my face, she knew something was terribly wrong. "What happened?" she asked, immediately setting down the rag. I slumped onto a stool, the vinyl cold beneath my legs, and poured out the whole story: the acceptance letter, the scholarship, the minimal amount of help I needed, and my parents' thinly veiled dismissal. I did everything right. I choked out, my voice cracking with emotion, straight A's, all the extracurriculars. I tried so hard, and they don't even care. Mia didn't respond immediately, which was unusual for her. Normally, she had a quick, sarcastic quip or a funny observation ready to lighten the mood, but this time she just nodded slowly, her expression thoughtful. "Hang on a second," she said, disappearing into the back room. A few minutes later, she emerged with her parents in tow. They had always been kind to me, offering me slices of leftover cake and friendly smiles, but I wasn't prepared for what came next. "Lauren," Donna said, sitting down on the stool across from me, her gaze warm and sincere. "Mia told us what's been going on. We want to help you." I immediately started shaking my head, overwhelmed. "No, I can't possibly ask you to do that." "You're not asking," Scott interrupted firmly. "We're offering. You've been an integral part of this bakery family for years, and we've seen how hard you work, how dedicated you are. You deserve this opportunity." Donna nodded in agreement. "We'll cover your tuition. You can work here part-time after your classes, and you can pay us back when you're able to. No interest, no rush." I couldn't wrap my head around what I was hearing. These people, who weren't even related to me, were offering to do more for me than my own parents had ever been willing to do. Tears started streaming down my face, but this time they weren't fueled by anger or frustration. They were tears of pure, unadulterated relief. That night, I went home and packed my bags. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, it felt possible. I didn't make any grand announcements. I simply packed a couple of bags, filling them with clothes and the essentials. The acceptance letter was placed right on top, a constant reminder that I was finally escaping. The next morning, as I left, my parents barely registered my departure. Mom was preoccupied with making breakfast for Amber, and Dad was already halfway out the door, rushing to work. Amber didn't even bother to look up from her phone screen. College felt like stepping into a completely different reality. It wasn't always easy, though. Balancing classes, my part-time job at the bakery, and the constant struggle of being perpetually broke was exhausting. But it was mine. For the first time in my life, I wasn't constantly cleaning up after other people or being unfairly blamed for things that weren't my fault. I could finally just concentrate on myself. My dorm room wasn't exactly luxurious. It was cramped, the mattress felt like sleeping on a collection of rocks, and my roommate Steph had an annoying habit of blasting country music at completely random hours. But we managed to get along well enough. She was also a freshman, and we bonded over late-night study sessions fueled by greasy takeout. We weren't destined to be best friends, but it was still nice to have someone to talk to who didn't automatically see me as just Amber's sister. The classes were definitely challenging. I'd always been a good student in the past, but college was a whole different ball game. I was majoring in business administration, which honestly sounded a bit dull at first. But the more I delved into the subject, the more everything started to click into place. A lot of what we were learning, especially the concepts of budgeting, organization, and problem-solving, reminded me of what I was already doing at the bakery. Now, though, I was learning how to elevate those skills to the next level. And speaking of the bakery, it was still a significant part of my life. I worked there several evenings a week and most weekends, handling everything from taking orders to managing the inventory. It wasn't glamorous work, but I honestly loved it. I felt like I was making a genuine contribution to something worthwhile. Plus, the regular customers were always entertaining to chat with. There was Mr. Peters, who religiously came in every Saturday for his black coffee and cinnamon roll, and the group of college students who were completely addicted to our blueberry muffins. One day, Scott called me into the back office. My immediate thought was, oh God, what did I screw up now? But instead of getting a lecture, he handed me a clipboard and said, "You've been doing a fantastic job, Lauren. We're thinking about expanding our catering business, and we want you to manage it." I just stared at him, completely shocked. "Me? Manage it? You're organized, reliable, and you've got a good head for numbers," he explained. "We trust you to do it." I was speechless. No one had ever entrusted me with something so important before. "I won't let you down," I managed to say, and I meant it with every fiber of my being. Taking on the catering business was definitely a challenge, but it also felt like a pivotal moment, a turning point. I threw myself into it wholeheartedly, creating schedules, managing orders, and even helping out with the marketing. I designed a flyer that we posted all around campus, and within a few weeks, we started getting calls for small events, study groups, club meetings, things like that. It wasn't a huge influx of business, but it was a start, and every successful event felt like a major victory. Meanwhile, my classes were starting to make more sense in practical ways. Concepts that had seemed abstract at first, like supply chain management or financial forecasting, suddenly clicked when I applied them to the real-world context of the bakery. I'd be sitting in lectures and think, oh, this is just like what I did with the catering schedule last week. It was like everything I was learning had an actual, tangible application, and that made it so much easier to stay motivated and engaged. Of course, things weren't always perfect. There were nights when I barely slept because I was struggling to finish an assignment or frantically prepping for a catering event. There were times when I felt completely burned out, questioning whether all this hard work was even worth it. But then I'd remind myself of why I was doing it. I wasn't just working towards a degree or a paycheck. I was building a life where I wouldn't have to rely on anyone else, where I wouldn't be treated like a doormat. Back home, things felt incredibly distant. My parents rarely called, and when they did, the conversations were always short and superficial. "How's school?" Mom would ask, and before I even had a chance to answer, she'd launch into some long story about Amber. That Thanksgiving, I only went home for dinner out of a sense of obligation. Amber was sitting at the table, casually scrolling through photos on her phone, while Mom bustled around, making sure everyone was aware of Amber's newest art classes. I tried to tune it all out, focusing intently on the mashed potatoes on my plate. But then Mom said something that made me freeze. "We've been saving for years to make sure Amber can go to the college of her choice." The words hit me like a physical blow. My fork froze halfway to my mouth, the food suddenly unappetizing. They'd been saving for Amber's college? I stared at Mom, trying to decipher her expression. "Of course," she replied, a flicker of confusion in her eyes. "We've always wanted to give her the best opportunities." The best opportunities, right? The same best opportunities that didn't extend to me when I was scrambling to pay my own tuition. The same people who couldn't be bothered to ask about my grades or listen to my aspirations. A bitter taste rose in my throat. I clamped my mouth shut, afraid of what might spill out if I spoke. The rest of dinner passed in strained silence, the cheerful sounds of my family's conversation a jarring contrast to the turmoil inside me. Amber, radiating smug satisfaction, acted as if she deserved the financial support she was getting. Back in my old bedroom that night, a decision solidified in my mind. If my parents wouldn't invest in my future, then neither would I in them. From that moment on, I would treat our relationship as a business transaction. They clearly didn't see me as their daughter, so I would stop acting like one. It was almost shockingly easy to detach myself. The highlight of my sophomore year occurred unexpectedly one evening. Mr. Wallace, a regular customer, walked in looking as polished as always in a perfectly tailored suit, radiating an aura of success. He ordered his usual coffee and muffin, and as I rang him up, he gave me a warm smile. "Lauren, right?" I blinked, surprised he knew my name. Yeah, that's me." He nodded, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "You've done a great job with this place. I've been observing how smoothly everything runs, and it's truly impressive." "Thanks," I mumbled, a blush creeping up my neck. "It's a team effort, though." "Still," he said, reaching into his pocket and handing me a business card. "We're always looking for smart, hard-working people at my firm. If you're interested, give me a call when you graduate." My fingers trembled as I tucked the card into my apron pocket. My mind was a whirlwind of possibilities. A part of me wanted to drop everything and seize the opportunity immediately, but I reminded myself that I still had 2 years of school to complete. Even so, the fact that someone like Mr. Wallace saw potential in me felt like a powerful validation of all the hard work I had been putting in. By the end of my sophomore year, I had managed to pay back every single cent Scott and Donna had loaned me for tuition. It felt incredibly empowering to hand them that final check, knowing I had fulfilled my promise and without their help. For so long, I had been desperately seeking their approval, trying to prove that I was worthy of their attention and support. But now I realized I didn't need their validation. There were people in my life who recognized my worth, and that was more than enough. By the time I started junior year, I felt like I had found my stride, although not in an easy way. Life was still hectic and exhausting, but I had developed a rhythm that worked for me. My classes were going well, I was earning good money at the bakery, and the prospect of a fulfilling future didn't seem like such a distant dream anymore. That's why I was completely caught off guard when my parents called one evening. I hesitated, debating whether to ignore it, but something compelled me to answer. "Hi, Mom," I said, mentally bracing myself for the usual update about Amber's latest achievements. "Oh, Lauren," she replied, her voice wavering as if she had been crying. "We need to talk." My stomach plummeted. "What's going on?" "It's just," she sighed heavily, "your dad made some poor investment decisions and things are really tight right now. We're struggling to cover our basic expenses." I blinked, unsure how to respond. My parents had never been the type to admit they were struggling financially. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said cautiously. "We were hoping you could help," she blurted out quickly, "just until we get back on our feet. You've always been so responsible and we know you're doing so well now." There it was. They weren't interested in my well-being or what I had sacrificed to get where I was. They simply wanted something from me. "What kind of help are you talking about?" I asked, struggling to maintain a neutral tone. "Maybe you could set up a credit card for us," Mom suggested, "just a small one for groceries and utilities. Nothing fancy, you know?" I stared at the towering stack of textbooks on my desk, feeling a familiar spike of resentment. The audacity of them asking for money yet again after everything. But a different thought nudged its way forward. It wasn't just about Amber or their choices this time, it was about me. Did I want to keep playing this role in their lives, the dependable one who always bailed them out? "Okay," I finally said, the word feeling heavy in my mouth. "But there's a limit, $1,500 a month, max groceries, utilities, and strictly essential stuff only." "Oh, thank you, sweetie." Mom's voice was effusive. "This means the world to us." The gratitude sounded real, but I wasn't naive enough to trust it completely. I knew how this usually went. Setting up the card was simple enough. I linked it to my account, but I was determined to keep a close watch on it. The first few months were surprisingly uneventful. Small charges for groceries, gas, the occasional dinner at a casual restaurant, nothing extravagant at all. A tiny flicker of hope ignited within me. Maybe, just maybe, things really would be different this time. Mom started calling more, usually to give me updates on their spending. "We're being so careful, honey," she'd reassure me. Just the bare necessities. Sometimes the calls would drift into her usual updates about Amber's life, but I mostly tuned her out. Our relationship had become purely transactional, and honestly, I was okay with that. Amber, predictably, wasn't thrilled about my involvement. "Why does Lauren have to know everything?" I overheard her snapping during one of Mom's calls. "Can't you just let me handle it?" "You don't even have a job," Mom retorted. It was rare, but a small flicker of satisfaction warmed me as I listened to them bicker. Months passed, stretching into a year, and I gradually started to relax my vigilance. The charges remained consistent and the money leaving my account barely registered. It wasn't like I was struggling anymore. Plus, I still carried Mr. Wallace's business card in my wallet, a tangible reminder of the future that awaited me after graduation. I guess I got too comfortable because the first warning sign appeared on a random Tuesday. I was reviewing the credit card statement as I did every month when I noticed a charge for $600 at some boutique clothing store. I called Mom immediately, my voice tight. "What is this?" "Oh, that's just a little something for Amber," she said breezily, like it was nothing. She needed a new outfit for an event. I pinched the bridge of my nose, fighting to stay calm. "Mom, this card is for necessities, not clothes." "She's meeting Ryan's parents this weekend," Mom argued, her voice taking on a defensive edge. "She has to make a good impression." Ryan was Amber's latest boyfriend, the newest addition to the long line of people my parents were utterly enamored with. I hadn't met him, but based on Mom's incessant gushing, he came from some wealthy family that owned a chain of luxury car dealerships. I just let it go, a sigh escaping my lips. After graduation, landing the job at Mr. Wallace's firm felt like stepping into an alternate reality. It was corporate, sure, but it wasn't stifling or pretentious. They respected my ideas, entrusted me with meaningful projects, and paid me a salary that exceeded my wildest dreams. For the first time in my life, I wasn't just scraping by. I could actually afford nice things, a reliable car, new clothes that didn't come from the clearance rack, and even a sleek little apartment in the heart of the city. Word of my newfound success inevitably reached my parents. Mom called me less than a week after I started the job, her voice so saccharine sweet it almost made my teeth ache. "Lauren, honey, we're just so incredibly proud of you. A big job at such a prestigious company. We always knew you were destined for great things." "Uh-huh," I replied, skeptical. I'd long since learned to decipher the subtext of their words. "We've been thinking," she continued, her voice taking on that artificially casual tone that always signaled trouble. "Now that you're doing so wonderfully, perhaps we could increase the card limit just a little, you know, in case of emergencies." "How much is a little?" I asked, already bracing myself for the inevitable. "Well, $2,500 seems reasonable, don't you think? Groceries are getting so expensive and Amber's art classes aren't exactly cheap." It wasn't about groceries or utilities, it was about Amber. It always revolved around Amber. "No," I stated simply, without room for argument. Mom gave a little, nervous laugh as if she thought I was joking. "Lauren, don't be like that. You're doing so well now. We're family after all." Precisely, I responded, which is why I'm already sending you $1,500 every month. That's more than enough to cover the essentials. She didn't directly challenge me, but I could detect a thread of disappointment in her voice as she said, "Okay, if that's how you see it." I thought that would be the end of it, but the sense of entitlement only intensified. Every phone call suddenly became a monologue about how successful I was and how incredibly proud they were, invariably followed by not-so-subtle suggestions about what else I could contribute. It never ceased. They seemed to equate my success with their own, and my money apparently was their money too. Every whim or desire was framed as a vital investment in Amber's future, and each time I put my foot down. "No, Mom. Sorry, Dad. It's not feasible. I'm already doing more than is reasonable." I could tell they resented hearing it, but frankly, I didn't care. I had spent most of my life letting them walk all over me, and I wasn't going back to that. In hindsight, I should have anticipated the eventual betrayal. I mean, how many opportunities can you provide people to reveal their true nature? Yet, even after all the ridiculous requests and guilt trips, I wasn't prepared for something on this scale. It began with a photo. I was at work, absorbed in reports, when my phone vibrated with a notification. It was a post from Amber's Instagram account. Usually, I ignored her posts, which typically featured her posing in expensive clothes or boasting about her latest accomplishment, but this one caught my attention because it seemed excessively extravagant even by her standards. The caption read, "Engaged. So blessed to be celebrating with family in Monaco. Incredibly grateful. #family first." The picture was even more jarring. Amber was standing on the deck of a luxurious yacht, clinging to some guy I assumed was Ryan. My parents were also there, beaming as if they'd just won the lottery. And to make it even more unbelievable, there were two other individuals I didn't recognize, presumably Ryan's parents. The backdrop was classic Monaco, sparkling turquoise water, sleek yachts, and the kind of skyline you only see in films. My stomach plummeted as I continued to scroll through the post. It didn't take long to put the pieces together. They were on a week-long trip to Monaco celebrating Amber and Ryan's engagement, my parents, Amber, Ryan, and his family all enjoying a lavish vacation in one of the most expensive destinations on Earth. And the most infuriating part? They had funded it all with my money. A quick check of my banking app confirmed my suspicions. First-class airfare for 6 people, €18,000. Yacht rental for the week, €25,000. Dinners at Michelin-starred restaurants, spa treatments, private tours of Monte Carlo. It all totaled over €50,000. I was beyond disbelief. I had provided them with a card for groceries and utility bills, and they had used it to finance a dream vacation to Monaco, a vacation I wasn't even considered for. I immediately dialed Mom's number. She answered on the second ring, her voice irritatingly cheerful. "Hi, sweetie. How's work going? Where are you?" I demanded, trying to maintain a calm tone. There was a moment of silence. I could hear faint music and the sound of waves in the background. "Oh, they're just taking a little break, you know, with how stressful things have been lately." Her voice was casual, almost dismissive. "A little break?" The words burst out of me sharper than I intended. "You're in Monaco with Ryan's family, using my money." The silence on the other end stretched, thick and suffocating. Finally, a mumbled, "Lauren, don't be dramatic." "Dramatic?" My voice trembled, betraying the anger that was boiling inside me. "You maxed out my credit card. You spent over €50,000 without even a word on a trip I wasn't even invited on." Before I could form a response, Amber's voice cut in, clear and grating in the background. "Is that Lauren? Let me talk to her." There was a brief scramble, and then Amber's voice filled my ear. "Lauren," she began, each syllable laced with irritation. "Can you just not ruin everything for once? This trip is important. Ryan's parents are here, and they need to see that we're a successful, supportive family." A bitter laugh escaped my lips. "A successful family? You don't even have jobs. You're living entirely off my money." "Oh, please," she scoffed. "You make plenty. What's 50 grand to you? It's not like you're exactly struggling." "It's my money," I retorted, "and you didn't even have the decency to ask." Amber didn't hesitate. "Well, maybe if you weren't always so bitter, we might actually include you. But honestly, you just don't fit in. You just make everything awkward." My jaw dropped. "Awkward? I'm the reason you're even on this ludicrous trip. You couldn't even afford this without me." "Exactly," Amber replied, her voice cold and precise. "That's all you're good for. You're not part of this family. You're just a wallet." The line went dead, leaving me staring at my phone in stunned silence. My chest felt tight, constricted by a knot of anger and disbelief. It wasn't just the money anymore, although that was infuriating enough. It was the fact that they didn't even see me as a person. To them, I was nothing more than a resource, a tool they could use and discard once they were done. With trembling hands, I opened the banking app again. A sudden feeling of clarity washed over me. First, I canceled the yacht rental, then the spa appointments, private tours, and reservations at Michelin-starred restaurants. And then I canceled their return flights. But I wasn't finished yet. I deactivated the card entirely, ensuring they couldn't charge another penny. The fallout started almost immediately. My phone began to explode, ringing with calls from Mom, Dad, Amber, and even Ryan. Mom's voicemail was sickeningly sweet. "Lauren, honey, please call me back. We need to talk. This is all just a big misunderstanding." Dad's tone was more threatening. "Fix this now, young lady. You're embarrassing the entire family." And Amber, of course, went straight to insults. "You better undo whatever you just did, or I swear to God, Lauren, you'll regret it." Even Ryan left a message, sounding lost and confused. "I don't know what's going on, but you need to call us back immediately." I refused to respond to any of them. Instead, I blocked their numbers and logged out of social media for the rest of the night. The next morning, I idly scrolled through Instagram and wasn't at all surprised to see Amber's latest post. The notification pinged, and I knew what it was before I even looked. Another public vlogging from Amber, this time a lengthy screed about toxic siblings and how, out of sheer envy, I'd single-handedly destroyed her precious engagement trip. The comments section was a predictable echo chamber of her sycophants, dripping with saccharine affirmations, "You deserve better," and "What kind of sister does that?" My blood simmered. I wasn't about to let her paint me as the villain in her little drama. So I crafted my own response. It wasn't fueled by rage, but by a quiet, steely resolve. I posted screenshots of the actual charges, the exorbitant expenses they'd stuck me with, alongside the barrage of entitled, demanding messages they'd sent. I concluded with a simple, stark statement: "So, yes, I canceled everything. Actions have consequences." Almost immediately, the narrative shifted. People started seeing through Amber's self-serving victimhood, calling her out for her blatant entitlement. Some even shared my post, amplifying my voice. By the end of the day, her comments section was overrun with strangers telling her to grow up, to take responsibility. The irony wasn't lost on me. Through the grapevine of mutual acquaintances, I learned the extent of their disarray. Stripped of the yacht and the first-class flights, my family was forced to scramble for alternatives. They ended up crammed into economy seats on some budget airline, stuck in a cheap motel for the duration of the trip. Apparently, Ryan's parents were incandescent with rage, blaming my parents for standing up to them. I let out a short, mirthless laugh. Wonderful. Now I was the pariah, the one strangers were rooting for to ruin my family's life. Ruin? Mia raised an eyebrow when I told her. "They did this to themselves, Lauren. You just stopped letting them walk all over you." And she was right. I knew she was. "Do you think they'll ever change?" I asked her, a flicker of something resembling hope or maybe just weary resignation in my voice. Mia shook her head, her expression firm. "Probably not, but that's not your problem anymore." Again, she hit the nail on the head. For the first time in my adult life, I realized I genuinely didn't care what they thought of me. I didn't need their apologies, their validation, or their belated acknowledgement of how badly they treated me. I was done. I wasn't the forgotten, invisible kid anymore, the one constantly overlooked and undervalued. I wasn't the scapegoat, the convenient target for all their frustrations. I certainly wasn't their personal ATM. I was just Lauren, finally living my own life on my own terms. And for now, that was more than enough. I'm starting to understand that sometimes the hardest part of growing up isn't learning to stand on your own 2 feet, it's learning when to finally walk away.